Hi, Product School. I'm Raluca Bujoreanu, and I'm here to talk about how do you know that you're building the right thing? And this is a question that appeared incredibly frequently since I have been working as a product manager. And I think that many other product managers can relate to that. So today I'm going to share a couple of ideas and techniques that will help you navigate with confidence through all the phases of the product cycle and even adjust if something is not right at some point. And before we start, a couple of words about me. I'm based in Berlin. I'm a senior product manager at Zalando, Europe's leading online fashion platform, where I'm currently focusing on creating a delightful and exciting experience for our new customers. I'm also a design sprints facilitator, and prior to being a product manager, I had several marketing and business strategy roles. And in the last 10 years, I had the opportunity to work with companies of different sizes and stages, and to understand how digital products are built in a large company or in a medium-sized company or startups. And it has definitely been an exciting journey. If you want to find out more about my path or to bounce ideas on how to transition to a product manager role, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or even to write some comments down below. I will answer them during this session. And in general, if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out. So going back to our main topic, it has several key elements that we're going to dive deeper into. So basically, we have you, which is about you and your role as a product manager in driving the team in building the right thing. We have building, and this is not only about development, but it's about the entire product process. And we have right thing. And basically, here we're going to talk how can you define right and how can you look for the best path to a successful outcome. So in general, today we're going to talk about how can you rest assured that you're going the right way, no matter the stage that you are in. So now let's look at your role as a product manager. And one of the biggest challenges is that you get ideas on what to implement and how to implement from literally everywhere and anybody. And you get ideas from management or from different investors or from stakeholders because they would like to see some features, or they think that they would be those would be some good ideas. Or you also get various ideas while looking at the industry and competition, because some features might be on the hype at the moment. And maybe you also get some ideas from your customers because they request them. But in general, and this is also what Melissa Perry said in her book, Escape the Build Trap, listening to everyone's opinions is important, but it doesn't mean that the product manager should implement every suggestion. And while it's very important to understand and to listen to all the various opinions, the best ideas actually come from understanding the problem space. And important is to understand your customer needs and not only what do they request. It's important to understand your competition and where do you stand in comparison to them. And also to understand your team's capabilities and how you can use them as an advantage to create value. And in general, the role of a product manager is to deeply understand both the business and the customer side, and in order to identify the right opportunities to produce value. And important is that you acknowledge from the beginning that at least half of our ideas, or ideas in general, are just not going to work. This is what also Marty Kagan said, the author of Inspired. And on the opposite, implementing all ideas would actually surface a high risk for the product, for the company, maybe even for your customer satisfaction. And this is why it is very important to find ways to validate the riskiest assumptions or ideas first. And this is a matrix that we use very frequently. Most probably, many of you are quite familiar with that. It's the value effort matrix that is used to prioritize product features and to decide what to work on. And most probably the majority would like to focus on the first quadrant, which is basically the quick wins. And here is also where many startups are going to focus on. And we also have the second quadrant, which is very attractive because here there are the ideas with more value, but which of course ask for more resources. And this is often what big companies are going to focus on. And the challenge is that with both of these quadrants is that usually the ones in the first quadrant brings a limited value, and you might be lucky with some of them. And the one in the second quadrant actually asks for more resources and more time, when in fact you don't know if they actually bring the value that you expect. And the goal would be to figure out how high impact product features could be moved from the second quadrant to the first one, and to validate all the risks and all the assumptions fast. And when we mean fast, we usually mean prior to implementation, because you don't want to ship every idea that you have to your customers or to waste development resources. And the product manager's role is usually to reduce risk prior to building anything. And there are different types of risks that you can and you should validate. So we have the desirability risks. Do my customers want this? And would they love this feature or this idea? We have viability risks. Is this idea going to be profitable, and should we actually do this? And we also have feasibility risks. And do we have the resources to actually do it? Can we do it? And the sweet spot between all the risks is where and how you should build your product. And during the entire process, you as a product manager should validate all three types of risks, usually multiple times, and also through different methods. And usually when we say build or the building process, most of us think of solutions and how do you design it, and how do you implement, how do you release, analyze, and repeat. And also most of the ideas that you get are on the actual solutions. So how many of you have heard, hey, let's build this? And if you actually don't analyze it too much and you build it very quickly, you might end up wanting soon another solution because the first one was not very effective. And actually the solution is just a small part of the process. And the issue with starting with the solution here is that you actually do not have time to understand the problem well enough to be able to come up with the right solution that solves the problem that you have. And this is actually described in the design thinking process. And you can apply this to product development so that you can define the problem and come up with the right solutions. And in this process, there are two areas. So we have the problem space and we have the solution space. And the problem space conveys that the customer's situation, what the customer's situation is. So you're basically going to spend time doing research, observing the customers. There will be no design or prototyping at this stage. But in the end, you will actually define the problem that you want to solve. And then you will start with the solution space, where you can define the solution and actually the right solution for your problem. So you can ideate, prototype, tests, and then again. And if we want to summarize it, in the problem space, you will mostly understand what is the right thing that you should build. So you're basically going to focus on discovery and definition. And the solution space is mostly on how to build the right thing. So the focus is mostly on execution. And according to the product's level of maturity or stage, you might need to spend a different amount of time in problem space and in solution space. And the problem can be in 4 stages during its lifetime, according to sales and moment in time. And this is the product lifecycle model. It's an economic theory developed by Raymond Vernon, and it's actually very, very used. And the 4 stages are actually introduction, growth, maturity, and decline. The introduction is the first stage of the life cycle. It's the very beginning of the product, where you actually build the MVP and you launch it for the first time. And sometimes in this stage, the product is the actual company, and the focus is here to find product market fit. And the goals from the business side would be to gain awareness for the product and gain your first customers. And in case the introduction phase is successful and you do find product market fit, the product will go to the growth stage, where your product is focused on expansion to stay competitive, and the business focus is to grow the revenue and the customer base. And when your customer base has grown exponentially, then your customers are happy, you're a well-established, well-known product, and you have entered the maturity phase. And the product goals are actually to sustain market share, but also to drive innovation, as well as to increase customer loyalty and optimize the business. And in the product cycle, it also comes a time when actually the sales will decrease and the product will not be so popular anymore. And this can happen due to market change, due to competition, due to product fatigue. And on these moments, the objectives are to remain profitable, but also to see whether you can pivot and innovate, or you can revamp the product and maintain your loyal customers. Or it might be that you will take the decision to just kill the product. And let's take Netflix, for example, to understand better, because I'm sure that all of you know Netflix quite well. And Netflix is actually a very good example of a product or a company that went through all the stages. So, for example, in 1999, the product was in the introduction phase. This is when they launched and they were focusing on selling DVDs. And most of only 1% of its transactions were rentals, and they were competing with Blockbuster, a retailer with a very high revenue, but actually their experience was not very great. So Netflix was able to fulfill some customer needs which were uncovered in the market. And by 2010, they were growing, and their website was much more simpler than this. And they actually entered the growth phase, and they wanted to expand even more. And this is how they committed to go streaming first. which helped them expand even more and to gain even more customers. And by 2013, Netflix's market share and customer base has grown exponentially, and they have entered the maturity phase where they are still today. And in the maturity phase, they decided to focus on original content, and they started to innovate continuously and to create an addictive, actually, experience. And they will actually need to continue innovating in order to keep their market share due to a high competition. So Walt Disney and Apple and many other providers are actually going to focus on streaming these days. And of course, the entire Netflix product is not in decline, but actually the DVD product line is. And yes, it still exists. In the moment when they realized that the DVDs are not going to be able to grow, then they created this, or they made the DVD product line separate, and they kept its clientele. And imagine or not, it is still profitable with a loyal database. But most probably at some point, they will need to decide to kill the product because they will not have any audience anymore. So now let's take a step back and see how does everything tie together. And maybe take a few moments and think in which stage your product or a product that you would like to work for is. And this exercise is very important because the product manager's role and his or her objective will change according to each of these stages. And it's also important to mention that the role of a product manager in a startup will be completely different than the one in the maturity phase. And the profiles of the people that succeed in these stages are actually very different. So for example, if you are a product manager in the introduction phase, for example, you need to launch a new idea, you're at the very beginning of a startup, most probably you will need to adapt rapidly by using insights from customers and from market. You will need to define your value proposition. You will need to validate the desirability and viability, and actually to find all the means to generate traction. If you already have a product that people appreciate, then your focus would be different. So you will need to accelerate the growth and find ways on how you can support more users with a better product, as well as allocate resources wisely and focus on your unicorn features. Most probably you will test a lot of ideas very fast. You will need to maximize viability and feasibility because you will need to show rapid progress and to expand quickly. And if, for example, you are a product manager for a product in the maturity phase, let's imagine that you've been a product manager for Netflix in the last couple of years. Your role would be to evolve the value proposition and to focus on customer satisfaction, as well as identify new product opportunities to ensure product development speed, because in the maturity phase, things can get a bit slow, actually, but also to innovate without accidentally damaging your brand. And of course, finding new ways and investing in promising future ideas so that you can keep your market share. And in case your role is of a product manager for a product in the decline phase, then you will need to think strategically about next steps. So either you will pivot or resurrect your current offer, or maybe just decide to phase out. And no matter what decision you will take, you will need to ensure a continuous communication with your customers, as well as reduce costs to a minimum level so that you can still be profitable. So now, how do you know that you're building the right thing in each of the product lifecycle stages? So coming back to what we said at the beginning, you will have to validate the different types of risks, so desirability, feasibility, and viability, when you are in the problem space and in the solution space. So how does this actually look like? So, for example, if you are working for a product in the introduction phase, so remember your product objective is to get to product market fit. So you will start by understanding the problem space, and you will start thinking of desirability. So who are my potential customers? What are their unmet needs and goals that are actually not solved in the market? And do I have the resources enough to actually solve their problems? And you will also need to think and to validate what customer groups and problems shall you focus on and which ones are the most profitable. And once you get into the solution space, you will need to think and to validate what solution will cover the customer needs, how fast can you build it with your existing resources, and how fast can you actually create value and validate this product market fit. And maybe let's think of as at Netflix, when they were a startup in the introduction phase, they understood that there is a need in the market and also several customer problems when looking at the existing experience and competitors. So there was a need for a better service when renting DVDs. And this is how Netflix came up as a DVD by mail service with an unlimited monthly subscription, lots of great movie choices, which arrived the next day. So that was quite successful back then. But then when you go to the growth stage, again, your product objective is to expand, scale, and to stay competitive. So you will, again, start defining the problem, but now you will look at different other questions. So you will look at who are your customers, so your existing customers, but also the ones that are not using your product, and what are their needs and goals, and how well is your current product actually meeting these needs. Of course, you will think whether you have the resources to solve the problems fast because you need to grow. And also you will need to see and to validate how can you best serve these needs, and what features can you implement to attract new groups of customers. And then when going into the solution space, most probably you will need to think of how can you create value faster, what solution will cover most of your customers' needs or non-customers, and how can you scale faster and also create more value. So again, if we think of at Netflix in their growth stage, they realized in the problem space, most probably, that not all customers want to rent DVDs, and that there is a need of easier access to the movies. And this is the only way how they can focus on more customer groups. And that's the moment when Netflix became streaming first and started to expand in so many countries. So, for example, if you go next in the maturity phase, so imagine that your product is very successful, you will still need to sustain this very high market share, as well as drive innovation, but at the same time maintain the brand reputation. So, of course, you will start by understanding the problem space, but looking at who are your best customers, which customers actually churn, what are their needs and goals. Most probably you will not think too much of feasibility, because usually feasibility and resources are not a big constraint in a big company. And you might also need to think, how can you turn your best customers into loyal ones? And then when thinking about solutions, you will actually think, okay, so do my customers actually love this idea that I have? And how actually can I drive innovation in the market? But at the same time, how can I innovate faster before my competitors? And how can I test all these ideas and new experiences in a risk-free environment without hurting my brand? So, for example, if again we think of Netflix, they realized in the maturity phase that in order to become a beloved product, they need to differentiate, and they understood that their customers want novelty and entertainment. And this is how they came up with original content, all the recommendations, and of course the easy access from multiple devices. And I believe that we will see a lot of innovation in the following years coming up from them. And last but not least, if you are a product manager for a product in the decline phase, so what do you do? How do you know what's the right thing? So of course here it's a more tricky situation, because you will need to start to understand why are your customers leaving, but at the same time, which customers are still loyal, and what is the competition doing, and how well can you actually still fulfill your customer needs, and whether do you still have the resources to do that. And when thinking of solution, of course, you will need to think whether you can either innovate, or whether there are ways to best serve your loyal customers with the existing resources while still being profitable. And this question, this aspect is very important, because depending on whether you will still be able to be profitable, you will decide whether you will continue. So if we again think of Netflix, they realized that the entire industry at some point will shift away from DVDs, and already back in 2010, they realized that. So they separated their product line, but they still maintained their loyal customers. And as we anticipate, at some point they will just need to kill this product, unfortunately. So now, after thinking of so many frameworks and risks to validate, questions to answer, and so on, you might think, okay, this sounds great, but how? How shall I do that, and how long does it take? And the good news is that there are many methods that can help you validate all the questions that we shared previously. So you can validate desirability, viability, feasibility through many methods. And I put here a couple of them. Some of them might be very familiar. For example, customer interviews, cart sorting, a day in a life, landing page, a clickable prototype. And some might be a bit more unusual. So for example, a storyboard or a mock sale. And we're not going to go today through all of them, but Strategizer actually published a book, which I personally appreciate very much. And it gives you a high level of detail on existing 44 methods that you can use and apply for your product. And you will be able to validate fast for desirability, viability, and feasibility. And this is not a paid advertising. It's just a book that I use very often in my work, and I think that it's helpful for every PM when thinking of methods to use and to de-risk their hypothesis and to test various ideas fast. And besides this, I listed here other helpful resources that will help you in understanding whether you're building the right thing. I personally love these books. So I hope that all the information was helpful. And if you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me on LinkedIn or to even comment. below. And remember that you have to launch and learn, and everything is progress. Thank you very much.